Hello everybody and welcome to today's webinar. Today we're going to be exploring opportunities across the Indian nutraceuticals market, and it's a pleasure to be presenting this on behalf of Klein & Company in collaboration with VitaFoods. Today's speakers is myself, Elizabeth Thundo. I'm Vice President of the Food and Nutrition business here at Klein, based in our London office, and I'm joined by my colleague Simriti Sharma, who's project lead in the food and nutrition business based out of Klein, India. So in case you don't know Klein & Company, quick background to us. So Klein & Company is a company that's been around for 65 years now, really focused on providing very detailed B2B market insights, market research and advisory services across many different segments of different markets. We have a particular expertise in several different ingredients markets, covering verticals such as personal care, pharmaceuticals, and also food and nutrition, which is obviously where Simriti and I fit into the picture. And in today's webinar, first off, I'm going to hand over to Simriti shortly. She's going to give us a bit of an overview of the Indian nutraceuticals market. Then we're going to look at some of the key trends in the Indian nutraceuticals market and how Indian consumer preferences differ a little bit to other global regions. And then we're going to deep dive three key trends. And these are trends we see kind of impacting globally the nutraceutical space, but also obviously having some particular resonance in India. And again, we'll contrast how the global situation differs to the local situation in India. And finally, we'll wrap up with a few key takeaways and hopefully some really great learnings for you to take forward from this webinar into your everyday business. So Simriti, I hand over to you and you can start sharing with us a little bit about the Indian nutraceuticals market.
Thanks, Liz. Okay, before we head and understand some of the numbers and the market aspects, just a quick recap on how we are defining nutraceuticals market. So for the purpose of today's presentation, nutraceuticals is defined as or includes supplements, which includes formats like powders, capsules, tablets, gummies, etc. And of course, functional food and beverage products. So how we're defining functional food and beverage is basically food and beverage products that include functional or health claims. So in the global context, and to understand where India sits in that global context, in 2024, global nutraceutical market was somewhere close to 440 billion, and India held somewhere, less than 2% of that share. But where global market is expected to grow at roughly 6%, India is expected to witness strong double-digit growth and is expected to hold somewhere close to 3% of share of the global market by 2030. In terms of the category segmentation, it's almost half and half between dietary supplements and functional F&B, though functional F&B is a bit bigger category. And of that, of course, functional beverages is a smaller category, but is expected to witness strong growth over the forecast period. Primarily driven by growing consumer demand for functional drinks like dairy beverages and sports drink. Also, growing demand for on-the-go products that can offer more than basic nutrition is expanding, and that remains a key growth driver for functional F&B category. So moving on to understand on slide 6, what are the key trends that is expected to, or what are the key drivers that is underpinning the growth in the Indian nutraceutical market. So we have identified top 3 trends. So in addition to, of course, macroeconomic trends like growing urban and middle class population, increasing purchasing power, we think that growing focus on preventive health and wellness across age groups in India is a major trend that is driving the demand for modern nutraceutical solutions in India. Also, the growing incidence rate of metabolic diseases like diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular diseases is another driving factor for growing demand for holistic wellness solutions. Additionally, we think that favorable government policies is providing a great impetus to the nutraceutical sector in India and I would say the overall wellness industry in India. Just to give an example, recently Government of India slashed GST on nutraceuticals to increase the affordability and accessibility of these solutions among masses. Also, government has rolled a lot of other initiatives to support Ayush sector, and also initiative to improve the ease of doing business for international players in order to support industry growth. So we think that collectively all these factors is what driving that double digit, or is expected to drive that double digit growth. However, having said so, on slide 7, we highlight some of the key challenges that we think is still limiting the demand or penetration of the nutraceuticals. So, of course, first being regulatory hurdles. Lack of harmonization, and I think ambiguity in terms of how we are defining some of these products, or how we are regulating some of these products, and also to certain extent labeling of these products is something that hampers innovation and product development. Another important factor is still lack of awareness, and consumers are still skeptical about the quality and the efficacy of some of these products. And I think it's a huge task on the brands, and as well as ingredient players, to create that level of awareness among the consumers to drive adoption. And though government and even non-government and brands all are taking initiatives to improve the affordability and accessibility, but still that remains a huge challenge, given that India in general is a price sensitive market. So now on that note, I will hand over to Liz to take us through some of the key top trends, and some of the consumer trends, and that will help us to understand what is shaping the Indian nutraceutical market. Liz, over to you.
Thanks, Simriti. So I think these trends really resonate with what you've already said, and they're also fairly present across the global market as well. These are kind of 6 key trends we've been tracking for at least a year, maybe a couple of years now, looking across food and nutrition and nutraceuticals as a whole. Of course, yeah, I won't talk about each of these trends in detail, maybe just focusing on these top 3, and looking at number 1 as our key trend, our main trend impacting the nutraceuticals market, being holistic well-being. And post-COVID, there's been a real increase in health consciousness and awareness amongst all global consumers. And this has been really driving the demand, particularly, I think, in the immune health and general health supplements. So it's had a real positive impact for things like multifunctional ingredients as well. And basic ingredients like vitamins and minerals as well have really been supported the growth of by this trend as well. And it extends not just to sort of the nutraceuticals, but also in terms of lifestyles. Consumers have focusing on that holistic wellness and very active lifestyles. And that's also creating opportunities for other ingredients, such as protein, obviously protein ingredients in functional food and beverages, and other sort of sports and active lifestyle nutraceutical ingredients as well. And that's been a key trend really impacting globally, and we expect that to remain a key trend going forwards. And I think that has that impact, as Simriti says, in the Indian market just as much as the global market. Equally, that value for money piece, as we heard from Simriti, price sensitivity is quite high in India. And whilst India hasn't had the same amount of economic slowdown, and it has much stronger economic growth than some of the other more developed regions, here in the UK, for example, or in the US, India itself is also facing a bit of an economic slowdown and rising prices. So this also puts some pressure on the market, and that value for money element, and means consumers are really looking for products that deliver both efficacy and value for money. And the third trend I just want to highlight today would be the clean label and natural trend. And again, this is a trend we see globally, but also important in the Indian market as well. As we all know, there's a growing preference from consumers for more natural ingredients, fewer synthetic additives, particularly around things like flavors, colors, sweeteners, and cleaner labels, so shorter ingredients lists. This is equally important in the Indian market. However, we know this can be sometimes a challenge, particularly for functional food and beverages. And if we take protein bars, for example, there is a lot of backlash around, are they truly healthy products when you see these large ingredients lists these bars have, even if they are calling out some of those health ingredients on front of pack labeling. So I think there's a real challenge in the functional food and bev and the wider nutraceuticals market to meet the consumers' needs for those products that deliver both, speak to their holistic well-being, so well-being across many different areas, that hit that value for money point, but also come in as looking clean label and natural as well. So yeah, some lot of different trends, I think, shaping the future of the Indian nutraceuticals market. And I think, of course, it's really important that we think about the specificities of the Indian consumer. So, how do consumer priorities for Indian consumers differ to other global regions? And you can see in this chart here, we've just plotted some of those survey data looking at those key reasons for consuming supplements across some key global markets, US, UK, Germany, and China, and contrasting that with India in the orange bar here. And you can see for those top four reasons: preserving health, losing weight, improving physical capacity, and mental capacity. The Indian sort of survey data is fairly in line with other global regions, particularly sort of US and then UK perhaps and Germany. China has its own sort of specificities. But where India really stands out as being some sort of unique attributes of the Indian consumer, you can see here the orange bar is really over-indexing in two specific categories. Firstly, improving my appearance, keeping my beauty. And you can see here that 50% of 36% of Indian consumers are looking at food supplements to improve appearance versus just 23%, for example, in the United States. And this really underlines this trend for that beauty from within, which we certainly see growing in regions like where I am. But in India, this has historically and culturally across APAC been more of a trend, the whole beauty from within market. So that's a really big segment, a really important concern for consumers in India. And the other place where India really over indexes would be in gaining weight and also a little bit in that balancing nutrition deficiencies. And this perhaps speaks to the wider concerns in India around dietary, the status of the diet as a whole, perhaps calorie intake, maybe not as high as it needs to be. So actually consumers are not only, in one hand looking at losing weight and maintaining cardiovascular health and things, but also actually for a certain segments of the Indian population, actually gaining weight. So kind of complete nutrition solutions, lifestyle kind of nutrition solutions could have a really, could play a really important role in the future of the Indian nutraceuticals market. And of course, this brings in a lot of opportunities for a real range of different ingredients. And on this chart, we've just plotted perhaps some of those big ingredient categories within nutraceuticals. So we have vitamins and minerals, more specialty ingredients, and of course, botanical extracts, and looking at which particular health concerns those ingredients target. And when we look at vitamins and minerals, of course, these are really solid multifunctional ingredients, very relevant across a wide range of different health concerns. When it becomes to the specialty ingredients and botanical extracts, they can be a little bit more specific for different health concerns. But actually, there's strong growth opportunity for clinically backed ingredients, and where ingredients are multifunctional and can meet sort of a variety of different health concerns. This is a real sort of something that can really speak to the consumer's desire for those holistic solutions. And you can take an ingredient like collagen, for example, where we see it's got a long established history around skin health, and muscle, bone, and joint health, and obviously both of those feeding into the longevity trend as well. So some really strong penetration in those markets, but increasingly we also see it being investigated and the efficacy looking at things like metabolic health and cognitive health, and obviously these extend to women's health as well. So these ingredients, which can really tick the box in a number of different categories, are where we see sort of strong growth opportunities. For the Indian market particularly, of course, the herbs and botanical extract segment is really strong. There's a strong preference from Indian consumers due to that cultural familiarity with a lot of these ingredients. And people have been used to having these ingredients through their diet in a number of different ways, but increasingly people are looking to supplement and looking at the specific active compounds within these ingredients and having sort of dosages that have that efficacy to really get the benefits from some of these more sort of traditional botanical extracts. And of course, in India, it's a really important raw materials hub for a lot of these extracts as well. And of course, the other category we see really potential in India would be women's health, not just looking at sort of menopause health, but also particularly in India, much less developed pre and postnatal health. So there's a lot of opportunity in those particular categories in the Indian market as well. And I think we can just look a little bit more at some of these bigger trends we see in the global stage, and compare how they kind of how we see those developing in India. And of course, one of the biggest trends we've seen in the global nutraceuticals market, definitely for the last year, maybe 18 months now, but certainly over the last year, absolutely exploded everywhere, is of course our keyword longevity. And this is a combination of that macroeconomic trends around aging populations, but also that health and that holistic wellness and health and wellness focus that we've seen. And you can see here some of the stats for the global market. And although the Indian market, we have a slightly less old population, the sort of population skews a bit younger. The longevity trend is actually, I think, still really significant here, as we see the middle class population developing, growing in terms of that purchasing power that Simriti mentioned. They're looking to ensure that longevity even from that sort of young age as well. Simriti, I don't know if you have anything else to add about sort of the growth of this trend specifically in India.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, looking from when contrasting in terms of the Western market, Indian market, I mean, 40 and above, that trend is gaining a lot of prevalence as we are looking to, at the overall well-being and that holistic well-being and the longevity aspect is gaining a lot of traction between those age groups. So though right now the penetration or the opportunity looks small, but I mean, over the forecast period, I think those supplements or products or solutions that are catering to that holistic well-being and longevity aspect in India would have a lot of growth aspects. Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, when we think about longevity, obviously it covers a real range of different sort of categories, different kind of health benefits and different ingredients as well. So just on this slide, just wanted to give you a bit of an overview of some of those and which ones we see kind of most attractive, particularly for the Indian market. And thinking back to that consumer and that beauty from within, the skin health element of longevity is really important, but also gut health and immune health. These are obviously key concerns for consumers when it comes to sort of longevity as well. But the longevity also extends to cognitive health, metabolic health, muscle, bone, and joint health, and also much more developing area, but within that whole cellular health function as well, with some specific ingredients like NAD plus precursors and things like that in that area as well. And I think a lot of the ingredients, these key longevity ingredients we see, they really have multifunctional properties that really can speak to a number of those different key consumer health concerns as well.
And I think if I had to add, there's a lot of focus on collagen as an ingredient in India. There's a lot of buzz around that, and definitely, India holds a lot of penetration potential. But like I said, coming back to the awareness and understanding of which consumer base needs it and how it can help is something that is very important to expand the penetration of some of these. I would say. Ingredients, I mean, in general, for longevity or for any application, I would say. So yeah, just wanted to add that.
Well, and the next trend we wanted to sort of dive a little bit deeper in would be around the rise of functional food and beverages, which again is something that's seen obviously globally. I think the trend here in the middle, the protein prominence, this is something it's actually becoming quite mature in many markets in the world, we've really witnessed as so many protein snacks, protein beverages, protein really in every kind of the food and drink that we have. So this is something that we're also beginning to see in India. And you can see here protein-based snacks have witnessed 15 to 20% growth in urban markets. So really significant growth there as well. Mindful snacking, again, looking at snacking not just as a sort of an indulgence, but really having that healthy indulgence, supporting weight management and having snacks that are really, supporting consumers on their broader holistic well-being goals. And of course, that functional drinks space as well, really developing globally and also in India. And I think in India, it's interesting, again, some specific cultural things in India where sort of functional beverage, there's been a lot of local functional beverages anyway in the market. So we do see some new kind of functional beverages coming in. But Simriti, maybe you could talk about some of those more more mature, more sort of traditional functional beverages from the Indian market as well.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about functional drinks, there's some. I mean, there's a whole huge market of drinks like fermented drinks. We are used to and this particular graph here shows that only that coconut water or for that matter fermented drinks is something that is culturally inherited and we are more inclined to those kind of drinks. But I would say that increasingly even still we are increasingly increasingly there's a growing demand for even packaged coconut water and organic coconut water and things like that. So definitely functional drinks is one sector that is gaining a lot of prominence, but at the same time it has a very strong competition from these naturally functional drinks that Indian consumers are generally I would say more habitual of drinking or having. So yeah, so I guess to penetrate to certain extent, I think two strategies is something that brands need to look at. Is of course what is the functional and the health claim that we are supporting on those drinks, and of course what price point we are offering that those kind of drinks that can help to reach more consumer base, I guess. Yeah. And also I wanted to talk about in terms of the snacking and all. I think Indian consumers have started to understand the kind of incidence rate when it comes to diabetes or even obesity, and have started to look at what they are eating, really reading the labels, and they really want to eat healthy. So that mindful snacking category is also expected to it holds a lot of potential. And of course protein is everywhere now in India also, but the question is that how much protein and what kind of protein one needs to reach their requirements. So that kind of awareness, again, it comes down to the awareness that consumers are really looking for when picking up these products from the shelves, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting the protein conversation when it comes to India, because of course, the protein, the dietary mix of protein is very different in India, say to UK or US, with the amount of vegetarians in the market and things like that. So they're used to getting protein from kind of different sources, perhaps, than we are here in where I sit. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
that protein space, well, and the functional beverage space, it really speaks to those very, those local cultural preferences, and really bearing those in mind when thinking about launching ingredients or products within the Indian nutraceutical space. Good. And I think maybe we can just quickly, there's a few examples here of some of the some recent functional drinks that have been launched. And I think what we want to highlight here, I won't spend long, is just the range of different health benefits being and ingredients being used in these different products. So we've got hydration, we've got probiotics, we've got electrolytes, I think with the hydration as well. Yeah, sugar-free fermented beverages, and also most interestingly, perhaps the long life probiotic buttermilk, a real first in the Indian market as well. So you can see the functional drinks market particularly is really across health claims, across different and different sort of beverage categories as well there as well. So a really kind of innovative market, really expanding at the minute as well. And so I'm going to hand over to Simran as well and look a little bit more at that, the more traditional Indian nutraceuticals market as well.
Yeah, I mean, like Liz mentioned, I mean, India is home to Ayurveda. I mean, and we have a rich heritage of roughly 3,000 years of understanding and Ayurvedic knowledge. And if you put this picture in the global context, I think globally, if you look at the nutraceutical ingredients market, botanical and herbal extracts roughly hold 32% share of the global nutraceutical ingredients market, and it's the only ingredient category that is expected to have double-digit growth, roughly 10 to 11% over the forecast period. And looking at the kind of the demand that we see in the global market, I think India is very well placed to cater to those requirements in global demand. Looking at the kind of diversity we have with respect to the botanical ecosystem and the kind of knowledge that we hold, and even in terms of the infrastructure, I think is something that India can support that kind of demand. If I talk about some of the statistics, I guess India is already one of the largest suppliers of MAPS, that is medicinal and aromatic plants, and is the fourth largest non-European supplier of botanical extracts to Europe. So, and if I add here is that it is just scratching the surface, considering what the potential India holds with respect to these herbal and botanical extracts. And I think India holds the potential to become one of the largest suppliers of these high quality, clinically backed and sustainable extracts. I think slide 17, we have tried and highlighted only few of a very extensive portfolio that India holds. These are some of the key extracts which are very popular, have very high penetration at the global scale. If you talk about ashwagandha, turmeric, slash curcumin, amla, bacoa. I mean, we are seeing the penetration of these ingredients globally. Like I said, I mean, the Indian, extract the brands are providing a very stiff competition, I would say, in offering some of these ingredients at the global scale, and we are just started and scratching the surface. I would say about the Ayurvedic and the botanical extract. So it's a huge potential there. Just to do a quick recap, so we discussed about of how what the Indian nutraceutical market looks like, what are the key trends, and how what are the Indian consumers are looking for. But despite a very I would say good outlook of the market, there is still strong challenges ahead, and I think it's at a global level also, that there is an increasing competitive intensity, there's shifting customer requirements, and of course there's ongoing regulatory and geopolitical challenges. So at Klein, we believe that to address some of these challenges, I guess there is need for the companies to focus on more partnerships and collaborations to drive the innovation in the market, and also look at some of the multi-channel strategies to support their growth. And there is a requirement to expand the investment in R&D to offer some of the high quality and clinically backed ingredients. If I talk about meeting the consumer shifting requirements, I guess brands need to focus on offering more personalized solutions. Though personalization, and we did not touch upon personalization a lot, though it is more mature and more has a more penetration in the Western market, but we have seen to see this trend even in the Indian market, and I think brands need to adopt that next generation technologies to offer some of these personalized solutions when we talk about nutraceuticals. In terms of the regulatory and geopolitical challenges, I think stakeholders need to work in tandem with regulatory authorities to ensure the compliance, and and also focus on the supply chain resilience, because that remains the key to overcome some of the geopolitical and the climatic challenges that we are facing at the global level. So those are some of the key strategies that we are proposing to navigate some of the key challenges in this market. Now I'll hand over to Liz to talk about some of the key growth opportunities for the Indian nutraceutical market.
Thanks, Simriti. Just as you say, just wrapping up, just kind of focusing on some of those key takeaways we want you to sort of learn from in today's webinar. I think you've heard a lot about functional beverages and snacks, and how important that segment is, and the growth in that area. As Simriti said, it's a smaller segment of the functional food and beverage market is the beverages, but it's the fastest growing part of the market, in the whole nutraceutical space. So really, if you're an ingredient supplier, absolutely vital to have those ingredients that really meet the needs within those from a technical perspective, in terms of solubility, for example, and things like that, to make sure they can be included in those formulations as well. With the protein, as we see here, those novel plant-based ingredients, I think there's a real opportunity, given the amount of different proteins consumed in the Indian market, much more familiarity with a lot of different types of protein ingredients in India. Real opportunity to do some exciting things in the plant-based snacking space and protein snacking space there from the Indian market as well. Of course, convenient dosage formats, perhaps more on the supplement side of things, is really important, and we see that growth beyond just tablets into things like shots, chews, gummies, for example. Really, the Indian market becoming more familiar with those as well. And as we've heard, there is there's some challenges with the customer base in terms of educating them and that awareness and price points perhaps, but it is a growing customer base. As it's a huge population in India, really beginning to really think, as Simriti's told us about from her experience, real focus on that health and wellness, real focus on what they're eating and how that contributes to their health goals across the different consumers, but also particularly for women as well. But I think if in terms of formulators, in terms of product manufacturers and ingredient suppliers, for me, what's really important is to understand those specific local conditions. And maybe part of that is about also finding the right partners in India, to really work with partners that understand the Indian consumer and what they need and how their needs are different to that global consumer as well, to really leverage that growing consumer base. So thank you ever so much for listening to our webinar today. Of course, if you have any further questions, or if you'd like copies of the presentation, please don't hesitate to get in contact with myself, Simriti, or find us on LinkedIn as well. We'd love to continue the conversation with you all. And of course, was also recommend, if you want to learn more, find out even more about the Indian nutraceuticals market, VitaFoods India is absolutely the place to go, February next year. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you ever so much for your time today.
Thank you so much.